Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Delivering Clean Freight Solutions in New York City webinar, co-hosted by Empire Clean Cities and the New York Department of Transportation's Freight Mobility Unit. My name is Joy Gardner and I'm the Executive Director of Empire Clean Cities. Next slide, Andrew. Before we get started, I just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping notes. Each presentation today will last about 15 to 20 minutes, and we will end with a 30-minute Q&A session at the very end of the presentations. Throughout the presentations, go ahead and at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there should be a Q&A button in your Zoom window. If you click that, a box should pop up, and you can go ahead and type your questions, and we will get to them at the end of the sessions. If we aren't able to answer your questions today due to time constrictions or we don't have the answers on hand, feel free to follow up with us afterwards, and we will get an answer to your question as soon as we can. The slides and the recording of today's webinar will also be available by DOT and Empire Clean Cities, and we will share those links following the webinar as well. I'd like to now pass it off to Tiffany Ann Taylor, the Deputy Director of DOT's Freight Mobility Unit, for an introduction to today's webinar. Tiffany?
Thank you, Joy. Good afternoon, everyone. As Joy mentioned, I'm one of the Deputy Directors for the Freight Mobility Unit. I just wanted to come on and say thank you all very much for attending this afternoon. We're excited to bring this partnership between Empire Clean Cities and DOT. You'll hear lots of interesting information about some of the work that DOT is doing from the Freight Mobility team and our Alternative Fuels program, and lots of opportunities as well from ECC about more sustainable and environmentally supportive business practices. Please stay tuned at the end for Q&A, as Joy mentioned. There are other folks joining this conference that are on our teams, and we're more than happy to answer additional questions that you may have. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Joy to start today's presentation.
Great, thanks so much, Tiffany. Next slide, Andrew. So we're going to start with a brief alternative fuel overview of some options in New York. This is by no means an exhaustive list, and it's really just meant to be an overview of what's available. If you have additional questions about any of the alternative fuels and options that might work for your fleet, please feel free to reach out to me after this webinar. I'm happy to walk you through some of the options in more detail and discuss how they can be implemented into your fleet. We'll have my email address at the end, but it's joy@empirecleancities.org. Next slide. So just to start, for those of you who don't know who we are a 501c3 nonprofit environmental organization based here in New York City. Our mission is to ensure clean air for future generations by providing citizens and stakeholders with reliable information about alternative fuels and advanced vehicle technology. We also run the Mission Electric site and campaign, and it is our electric vehicle campaign. It's also an online resource hub that we recently launched last year. We're a small but mighty team. As you can see at the top, this is our staff and interns, and then below are our esteemed board of directors. Next slide. So while we're an independent nonprofit, we are also part of the larger Clean Cities Coalition organization. It is a program out of the US Department of Energy. It's been around for about 30 years. It is a national network of about 80 different coalitions that have helped place thousands of alternative fuel vehicles and fueling stations across the country and reduced over 12 billion gallons of petroleum. Not each year, but in the total life of the project. One unique thing about our coalitions is that we have access to national data information on fuels from our network across the country, competitive funding opportunities, and support from the US Department of Energy's Vehicle Technology Office and the national labs. So if we don't have immediate answers for you, or we can find those answers, those technical answers, and also connect you with fleet managers that might be doing something similar to you from across the country. Next slide. So a little bit about what we do. Like I mentioned, we connect fleets to fuel providers, industry partners, and the resources you need to cut your emissions and save in fuel consumption. We also offer training and access to technical assistance and provide education and outreach to decision makers, fleets, and the public. So very similar to the webinar we're doing today. We also identify funding and incentive opportunities, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We collect and analyze regional data. So on a quarterly basis, we collect alternative fuel pricing data, which is aggregated into a nationwide report, so we can track the changing cost of alternative fuels compared to diesel across the country. We also assist with alternative fuel corridor planning. So that means we help identify gaps in corridors to make sure if you're going on the long haul that you have a place to stop and charge or fuel up from point A to point B. Next slide. So again, we're going to do a very quick overview of the different alternative fuels that are available. And I just wanted to start by saying why switch to alternative fuels. There are some big cost savings, both by switching to alternative fuel electric vehicle or just implementing some really basic sustainable fleet practices. They can save you money on fuel and maintenance expenses. So it's a cost-effective transition. Cleaner air. All alternative fuels produce fewer emissions, some more than others. And so you can greatly reduce the harmful emissions compared to conventional gas and diesel vehicles. This also, in addition to being great for the environment, it also helps improve local air quality, which is great for your drivers and operators and also the communities that you work in. Quieter rides. This one is particularly focused on electric vehicles because there's no internal combustion engine. Driving an electric vehicle is virtually silent. It also supports, switching to alternative fuels also supports the domestic economy. Many of the alternative fuels are made domestically, or the electricity is sourced domestically, which utilizes the country's resources and strengthens the economy. Next slide. So the first alternative fuel I'm going to talk about today is biodiesel. It is a domestically produced renewable fuel. It's manufactured from vegetable oils like soybeans, animal fats, and even restaurant grease. It can be blended and used with diesel, sorry for that typo, in many different applications. The most common concentrates are B2, B5, B20, and B10, or B100. And these just mean, this is just the percentage of biodiesel to diesel ratio. So B20, for example, is 20% biodiesel and 80% conventional diesel. And so the most common is B20, and B20 can be used in almost all diesel engines without modifying your engine or replacing your vehicle. So this is a great option if you aren't ready or if you're not able to replace your current vehicles. You can start using B20 tomorrow in your diesel vehicles and see some big reductions in your greenhouse gas emissions. The fuel is also biodegradable. And it's just an overall cleaner burning replacement for diesel fuel in your current diesel vehicles. It also has similar payload capacity, range, horsepower, and torque as diesel, so you won't notice any differences in performance of your vehicles. Biodiesel is widely used across the country and across New York City. The New York City fleet, for example, operates on a variety of different biodiesel blends in their current diesel fleet vehicles. And they've had great success with it over the years, and happy to talk to you more about your biodiesel options after this webinar in more detail. But for now, we're going to move on to the next one, which is natural gas. So what is natural gas? Natural gas is hydrocarbons predominantly made from methane. It's used in forms of compressed natural gas and liquefied natural gas. Conventional natural gas is a fossil fuel and it's extracted from gas and oil wells, but there is also a renewable option called renewable natural gas that's produced from landfills and livestock operations by capturing that methane that would otherwise be released into the atmosphere. Some of the benefits of natural gas, horsepower, acceleration, and cruise speeds are relatively the same as your conventionally fuel vehicles. It tends to be a less corrosive fuel, so it reduces some of the maintenance costs and increases the lifespan of your engine. It's also domestically available and produced, and there's already an established network of natural gas fueling stations from across the country for a relatively low cost. Natural gas vehicles can also reduce your emissions, improving your quality of your community. RNG can also be carbon negative. Again, I mentioned by capturing that methane that would otherwise be released into the atmosphere and repurposing it as a viable fuel source. There is a renewable natural gas station in the Hunts Point neighborhood of the South Bronx, which is in that second picture. On the left, you can see a food truck filling up with renewable natural gas. The picture at the bottom is of Manhattan Beer. They are a huge advocate of compressed natural gas, and the majority of their fleet currently operates on compressed natural gas, and there would be a great resource if you're considering transitioning your fleet to natural gas engines. I also want to note that this is a very quick overview, but we, Empire Clean Cities, hosted a renewable natural gas webinar with partners at Energy Vision in June of 2020. And we can drop that link in the chat now. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about renewable natural gas in New York City and the different vehicle options, I highly recommend that you check out this webinar, or at least the slides. And also a little bit later on, I'll also have a couple of other links to resources where you can compare the different vehicle options if you're considering that transition. Next slide. The next alternative fuel we'll talk about is electric vehicles. Electric vehicle operates by onboard rechargeable batteries that store energy to power one or more electric motors. The batteries can be used the batteries are charged using electricity from either the grid by plugging into a charger, which we'll talk about in a second, and also by energy recaptured during braking, known as regenerative braking, which is particularly useful if you're stopping and starting quite a bit, which I'm sure most of us who drive in the city know all about that. Some of the benefits, the vehicles that run on electricity produce no tailpipes emissions. So they are zero emission vehicles, which are great for the environment and improve local air quality. While there are higher upfront costs for these vehicles, you will save down the line on fuel and maintenance cost savings overall. There are also a number of vehicle incentives, which we'll talk about in a little bit, both at the city, state, and federal level. There are fewer moving pieces in an electric vehicle motor, so there are reduced maintenance costs and no oil changes, which is nice. It's a quieter drive, as mentioned earlier, which is better for drivers' hearing and just overall experience in the vehicle, and also the community impact. If you're making a lot of deliveries in quiet neighborhoods or late at night, this is also a great opportunity to reduce noise pollution. They also have electric vehicles have instant torque, which allow for towing and hauling of large payloads at lower speeds. And there's also the vehicle to grid potential. And this means that the energy from the vehicles can be pushed back to the grid, which is a great opportunity to manage your charging, as well as a good tool for resiliency in the event of a power outage. Next slide. So this is just a quick table that talk about the different some of the different electric vehicle charging options. And these are the options for plugging directly into the grid. There are currently 4 different types of options available. Level 1, this is more for light duty vehicles, and this just plugs into a regular 120 volt connector, similar to what you plug into your dryer. Level 2, these can be used for residential and commercial, and they have about 10 to 20 mile range per hour of charging. These are a bit slower, but these are a great option too if you're charging your vehicles overnight. The DC fast charger is quite a bit faster, with 60 to 80 mile range per 20 minutes of charger, and these are better applications for commercial vehicles. And then finally, wireless charging, which is just as it sounds. It doesn't plug in directly, but rather uses a wireless network to charge. And it's a little bit slower of a trickle, with 10 to 20 miles of range per hour for charging. And wireless works in situations where you have a tight depot with vehicles that are parked relatively close to each other, and doesn't make sense for a lot of cords. So these are the available options. And when you're considering an electric vehicle, I highly recommend that you reach out to us, and we can talk to you about some of your options in terms of charge planning. There are some things to consider, including coordinating with your local utility, Con Edison, to make sure that to identify where the best place to place your charger, and if there needs to be additional power brought to that location. There are also a number of charge management companies that can provide you software and talk about the best time of day to charge your vehicles to reduce the cost of, reduce the demand charges for your vehicles, making it even more cost effective. Next slide. So those are just a few of the alternative fuel options that I'm going to discuss today. There are others, including propane and hydrogen. I'm happy to talk about those in more detail outside of this webinar, or you can visit our empirecleancities.org or the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which we can drop a link to that in the chat as well. But I'd also like to talk to a couple of sort of low-hanging fruit options that you can implement right away to reduce your emissions and cut your fuel costs. The first is idle reduction. So idling is when you run your vehicle's engine when the vehicle is not in motion. So if your vehicle is parked for an extended period of time while you're making a delivery, or your drivers are on break, that can eat up a lot of fuel, and also is constantly emitting emissions into the air. So some of the benefits of anti-idling policies and equipment, obviously the fuel saving costs and a reduction of petroleum consumption, but there's less engine wear, reduction in air pollution, and reduction in noise pollution. Even though your vehicle is not in motion, if it's not an electric vehicle and it's idling, it is making a sound. It's also against the law, and so you can save on expensive idling tickets. For those of you who aren't familiar, but New York City has a 3-minute idling rule and 1 minute in the school zone, and we use a citizen citizen action system where a citizen can report, take a short video of a vehicle idling and report that to the DEP, and then you'll get a ticket issued, and those tickets can get rather costly, especially if it's your second or third offense. So turn turn your engine off and save on fuel and the cost of those tickets and reduce the air and noise pollution. And just for fun on the side, for those of you that remember early last year, the New York City DEP launched a anti-idling campaign with Billy Idol, and it's called Billy Idles and Neither Should You. And that's you can, I think, still visit that site as well as our ECC site to find out some more information on anti-idling policies that you can implement and some equipment that you can get installed into your vehicles to have them automatically shut off after a certain amount of time. Next slide. And then finally, just talking about maintenance and fleet right sizing, making sure your vehicles are in shape, that your engines are tuned and tires are inflated, that you're, if you are using a conventional vehicle, making sure that you using the right grade of motor oil. Also, fleet right sizing, eliminate unneeded vehicles in your fleet. Use smaller and more efficient vehicles when possible. That's just an example. The city of Detroit saved $1 million by right sizing their fleet. The city of New York has also has been working on reducing their fleet as well. So there's a lot of great examples of how this can save you some money, and happy to chat with you about that after this webinar as well. Next slide. And here are just a few additional tools. I mentioned a number of different options within, particularly for natural gas and electric vehicles, which in most cases require a new vehicle. And so you can visit the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which is operated by the Department of Energy. And they have a great vehicle search tool, and you can search by what type of fuel you're looking to transition to, what class of vehicle, and what type, be it delivery, garbage truck, et cetera, and they can find the options that are available to you. You can also find some alternative fuels, the station locators. So if you're transitioning to a non-diesel vehicle and you want to know where you can charge up or fuel up, this is a great resource to find publicly available stations in your region. If there isn't a station available, please reach out to us and we can help connect you with a fuel provider or electric vehicle charging company to help you on that transition. And you can also always reach out to our website, empirecleancities.org, where we list different funding and incentives that are available to you, as well as more information on all of these alternative fuels and some previous webinars that you can watch for a deeper dive, particularly in RNG and electric trucks. Next slide. And then again, please reach out to us if you have questions. We have a number of tools beyond those that were just mentioned. We can do an emissions assessment on your fleet and offer some recommendations. We can provide unbiased connections to vendors and manufacturers. And we can also provide training and alternative fuel planning to help you through your transition, and making sure that that we lead you in the right direction. We can also provide assistance with funding applications and proposals. So once a little bit further down the line, once we're talking about the funding opportunities that are available to you, we're happy to help. And if you're outside of the New York City and Lower Hudson Valley region, we can connect you to the local Clean Cities Coalition in your region that can help provide all of these same tools. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. So now I'm going to pass it off to Andrew Diaz, who is the freight planner at the DOT's Freight Mobility Unit. Andrew?
Thank you, Joy, for that introduction. Just a real quick recap. If you have any questions, please remember to use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen. Just see a little Q&A box. So as Joy said, my name is Andrew Diaz. I'm currently a freight planner in the Freight Mobility Unit with the New York City DOT. I help with off-hour deliveries program implementation and other freight initiatives. So today I will be going over some freight mobility programs that enable us to ensure our city is able to conduct freight activities safely, effectively, and sustainably. I will give a brief overview of where our unit is located within DOT, as well as going over a few of the programs that we hope work on. So a brief introduction. The Regional Strategic Planning Unit is a subdivision of the Transportation Planning and Management Division. It was established our unit seeks to improve division in transportation from a broader lens and help coordinate with partners at a regional level. Our subdivision, just to name a few, we lead coordination around accessibility, freight mobility, and clean vehicles and fuels. The Freight Mobility Unit was established in 2007 with the goal to help improve safety and efficiency of truck deliveries, with our goal to mitigate adverse impacts from trucks on our city's infrastructure and communities, and to support the city's economic competitiveness and livability. So as a growing city, we need to examine how we can make the changes necessary to accommodate its growing needs as well. It's anticipated our population is going to grow by 6.4% by 2045. However, currently though, those 8.6 million people, these 8.6 million people in New York rely on 186 million freight tons that are moved through New York annually. However, freight activity is also expected to increase by another 68%. But with these increases, our city's current road infrastructure is not expected to grow. Our streets are already strained as is, so we must find ways to ensure equitable access to our roads and our businesses. Within freight mobility, our goals include creating partnerships with the freight industry to improve safety, economic efficiency of truck deliveries across the 5 boroughs, as well as improving environmental performance. We strive to foster a culture of regulatory compliance in the trucking industry and expand partnerships with the freight and trucking industry to encourage data sharing to better manage truck movements throughout the city. Together, our goals stem from the city's 2016 strategic plan, the roadmap to 80 by 50 plan, which is aimed to reduce emissions 80% by 2050. And finally, the One New York City plan, which is a strategy to confront our climate crisis, achieve equity, and building a stronger and fair city. Ultimately, within freight, we strive to enhance economic vitality and our quality of life for all New Yorkers by providing a safe, equitable, efficient, and responsible movement of goods. The freight mobility programs all stem from these policies within these plans and from our freight vision. On the policy side, our unit is focused on the implementation of off-hour deliveries, bridge strike mitigation, truck safety, and neighborhood loading zones. On the implementation side, our unit focuses on truck route management and signage, street improvement projects, and the expansion of the commercial cargo bike pilot program. However, while all of our units' work is interwoven together, today we're only going to be focusing on the following programs. We will begin with off-hour deliveries. So the off-hour delivery program initially started as a pilot in 2010, has since expanded to become a program within DOT. The goal of the program is to ultimately shift commercial deliveries to off-peak hours to help reduce congestion during the daytime hours and to help reduce interactions with vulnerable road users. From the pilot, it was identified that there are many environmental impacts to the implementation of OHD, including reducing congestion, a reduction in truck idling, and reduced emissions because vehicles are no longer circling the block looking for parking. DOT's role in off-hour delivery implementation is to provide technical support as well as a tailored implementation. We believe tailored implementation of the program is necessary because we realize OHD is not a one-size-fits-all approach and each business operates differently. And finally, we help with curbside access where it is feasible. So we target mainly transporters and receivers. However, we encourage all businesses of all sizes to make the switch with their deliveries. These are a sample of some of our well-known partners. They range from startups to companies who've been around for many years. But as I said, we encourage businesses of all sizes to join. In addition to being a part of our program, these businesses and others from the pilot have all identified several benefits to conducting OHD. Receivers have noticed that when goods are delivered outside of their store hours, it allows them to have good stock and be better prepared before opening. In addition, they noticed reduced delivery costs and they're more certain about their truck arrival times. Transporters have also noticed their own benefits, such as they discovered that they're able to utilize their truck volumes better, which ultimately leads to more efficient deliveries. They also noticed cost reduction in fuel and also less parking tickets, which ultimately translates to less parking headaches and reduced delivery costs. So in 2019, Mayor de Blasio adopted the OHD program as a sustainable policy and has pledged to expand our program. Initially, our goal was to reach 500 business locations by the end of 2021. However, this has now tripled to 1,500 locations by the end of this year. In addition, we've expanded our target outreach areas in Manhattan and Brooklyn, including expanding our digital and print media campaigns to help recruit partners. As of January of this year, we continue to expand and work on our marketing efforts to recruit, despite the many impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic, and we continue to focus in the highly congested areas, including Manhattan south of 59th, downtown Brooklyn, and downtown Jamaica and Flushing. So DOT is especially interested in greening the last mile of freight deliveries. The implementation of the commercial cargo bike program seeks to do exactly this. So with the focus on the most congested and dense areas of Midtown and Lower Manhattan, the pilot program was launched in 2019 with specific guidelines on vehicle specifications, safe operation, education, enforcement, and data sharing. Currently, the DOT pilot is one of the largest in the US, and it's allowed the city and businesses to work together to better understand how cargo bikes can successfully fit into our city streetscapes. It's currently estimated that 2 cargo bikes can replace 1 delivery truck, leading to approximately 16 tons of CO2 savings a year, which is equivalent to 240 planted trees. As noted, the cargo bikes program contributes to our One New York City goal of sustainability, increasing freight mobility, as well as increasing safety and reducing congestion. Since the program launch, DOT has proceeded to double the number of participants in the program from 3 to 6 companies. With partner expansion, this has also led to an increase in the number of cargo bikes that are used, tripling that number to approximately around 350 bikes. While we currently have partners amongst the largest transporters, as you can see on the right-hand side, we welcome all businesses of all sizes that have the capacity to conduct deliveries, as long as they are in compliance with the laws on cargo bikes. In addition to our delivery types, our target is mainly freight deliveries, but that doesn't preclude other types as well. For example, one partner delivers groceries and another partner delivers residential packages. As we continue to move forward, DOT will continue to expand this program through 2021, especially with its many environmental benefits it produces. So finally, we're going to talk about the neighborhood loading zones. So New York City launched the NLZ demonstration project in summer of 2019 with the aim to reduce parking on residential streets by providing a space for loading activities to occur, including expeditious pickup and drop off from personal vehicles, taxis, the cargo bikes I just mentioned, and of course, package deliveries, residential package deliveries. The transformative shift in residential freight deliveries due to the COVID-19 pandemic required us to find creative approaches to accommodate this growth. It also required us to analyze the demand for curb access and develop new curb management strategies. Therefore, the NLZ program was launched officially in summer of 2020, and it's become quite popular. Locations that have NLZs saw a 7 to 23% decrease in double parking. Most of the NLZs throughout the city have high utilization, but corridors with the highest saw on average 600 vehicles per space per month for about 26 minutes at a given time. In addition, these NLZs have helped to reduce vehicle idling, emissions from the vehicles that have circled the block, reduced reduced vehicle honking, and an increase in neighborhood safety. in addition to the double parking concerns that it was striving to solve. So we currently have installed over 111 loading zones along 26 corridors citywide, and we continue to expand this program. As we continue to expand, we continue to seek community engagement and feedback on it, and we look for yours as well. The link to provide more feedback is in this presentation, so when we send it out, you'll be able to access this. So ultimately, this concludes DOT's presentation. If you're interested in any of the programs that I just went over, you can always visit our website at newyorkcity.gov/trucks, or you can email the Freight Mobility email and someone from our team will get back to you. Thank you, and I appreciate your time. I am now going to be handing it off to Susan McSherry, who is the Director of the Alternative Fuels Program.
Susan, I think you might be.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry. Sorry. There's a little thing over here. Here you go. Am I on? Can you see me?
You turned your camera off.
Oh. It's strange.
There you are.
There I am? Okay, very good. Hi. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the presentation. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the New York City Clean Trucks Program, which is an expansion of our successful Hunts Point Clean Trucks Program, now available to fleets that operate in and around industrial business zones throughout New York City. Next slide. Thanks. So New York City is committed, as Andrew had mentioned, to meeting clean energy goals, as envisioned in the 80 by 50 plan. This is basically the city's, a vision and implementation plan of how we can institute programs and projects that will help us reach these goals. And for this particular project, the majority of diesel comes from Class 4 through Class 8 trucks that operate in New York City. They emit particulate matter and carbon dioxide, which contributes to climate change. It contributes to increased asthma cases and is harmful to human health. So we feel that by deploying electric and alternative fuel trucks in freight, will help reduce the negative environmental impacts of these vehicles that typically operate on diesel. Next. So the Clean Trucks Program is being offered by New York City DOT as a way to promote sustainable transportation. We've had funds allocated to us through the Federal Highway Administration Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, or CMAQ. And we've also now received Volkswagen diesel settlement funding as well to help continue the program. And with that VW settlement funding, we've been able to expand to the various IBZs throughout New York City. It provides rebates incentives to reduce diesel exhaust emission, replacing older heavy polluting diesel trucks with new alternative fuel varieties like compressed natural gas, battery electric, diesel hybrids, and even new diesel trucks with the newest engine standard and emissions technology. And as far as funding, we have from $12,000 up to $185,000 in rebates that are based on fuel type and truck class size. So what we're trying to do is, ease the financial burden of trying to get into some of these newer technologies by offering these incentives and getting trucks on the road that are cleaner and more efficient, and reaching our goal of healthier air quality for all of New York City. Next slide, please. Thanks. So, okay. VW. So VW was our part of that is working with the Department of Environmental Conservation where we submitted our project. We were basically shovel ready because we were already up and running, and received funding through this VW Diesel Emission Environmental Mitigation Trust Agreement, which is national and is really the amount of money is based on the number of vehicles that Volkswagen sold in the state that where they were found guilty of cheating on emission standards for their diesel vehicles that they had brought to market here a couple of years back. The purpose of the Mitigation Trust Fund is to reduce the NOx emissions that those vehicles created. And for us, DEC is directing $9.8 million to the program to fund medium and heavy duty replacements. We have a sort of a mandate from DEC that we target and really work hard to help with fleet transition to electric vehicles and zero emission trucks. And that as we do this work, that we are mindful and we work to target these emission reductions in environmental justice communities that have historically been disproportionately affected by these, freight uses and diesel exhaust emissions in general. Next slide. So as I mentioned, funding is now available for 20 industrial business zones throughout the city. We initially started years ago now in Hunts Point and Port Morris, where the food distribution center is located for New York City and the region, and sees about 15,000 truck trips a day. So we focused there. And with the VW money, now we are able to expand out to all of these various industrial business zones. You need to be working, have an address within the industrial business zone as a business owner, or provide service within half a mile of any of these program approved areas. And we do an analysis of that when a company submits an application. Our team will look at the current vehicle, the qualifying vehicle, as we call it, the current vehicle's use and mileage, registration, insurance, et cetera, all has to be up to date. And then we take a look and we check to make sure that that vehicle does indeed operate in an IBZ, so that we know we're targeting these funds towards the communities that are adjacent to these industrial areas. Next slide, please. So fleet eligibility requirements, we are goods movement only, not people movement. So our program could not help fund a school bus or any kind of a bus type of program, or a jitney, for instance. But we are working with businesses that move goods, and commercial truck owners and fleets that operate port drayage in all this variety of vocations that you see here. Next slide. And we've worked with DEC to set up this program so that incentives for electric vehicles are very attractive. Even for a Class 4 vehicle, you can get an incentive for the purchase of a new battery electric vehicle, Class 4, at $100,000. All the way up to Class 8, $185,000. These incentives are subject to change pending, any changes at DEC, but right now they are solid, and there are funds that are available for you to take advantage of if you want to get into a BEV. These are the amounts you can receive. Next slide. But we also try to just, the bottom line is we get these old trucks off the road. So we've been able to fund diesel replacement vehicles as well. Those numbers obviously are a little bit less, a lot less for EV, but then all across the board, you see the various incentives based on fuel type and based on the size, the class size of the vehicle. Yeah, also, just a note up on top, based on fleet size. So there is an issue here where diesel to diesel replacements are only allowed for what we would call a small fleet, and a small fleet consists of a company that owns 14 or less trucks. Any type of a company that would come to us to ask for incentive funding, if you are 15 or more, you would not be considered a small fleet, and you would not be able to actually take advantage of the diesel to diesel replacement. It is only available for diesel to alternative fuel replacement. Next slide. And so the eligibility requirements are that your older current truck that you own needs to be 1992 to 2009 engine model year, class 4 through class 7 for local goods movement and commercial diesel fuel trucks, class 8 port drayage or local freight diesel fuel trucks. The VW fund is actually broken into 2 separate funding categories, which is why we list it as this here. The vehicle, the old vehicle, the qualifying vehicle, needs to have been operating in New York City for the past 24 months at a minimum. And the older truck, once you would get approved to purchase a new vehicle using incentives through our program, that older truck will be required to be scrapped, which will ensure that that truck does not wind up in some other community and causing environmental issues out of the city. We don't want to export our problems. Next slide, please. Yeah, and also, additional details apply. Obviously, there's a whole set of paperwork and information that need to be reviewed by the team and approved by the team, and everything is kind of really a one-off depending on the applicant's vocation and certain circumstances. So I encourage you to call the 800 number that's on the slide below to get further information. And as you move through the process, to stay in touch with our great team at Tetra Tech, who will help you get to approval. The replacement truck should be a brand new truck. We would not allow, for instance, a repower. That's not allowed under our program. The newer truck would have to perform the same function as the truck that's being replaced. So vocation would need to remain the same. The class 4 through class 8 trucks must be replaced with the same weight class as the old truck. I probably should have updated this little note right here, but we just recently received approval from DEC so that if you have a class 4 diesel vehicle and you'd like to get into a battery electric truck, you can go into 1 to 2 weight classes higher. So you can go from a 4 to a 6 if you're going into a BEV, or a 5 to a 7, etc. However, the class 8 must be replaced with a class 8. There isn't a 6 to an 8 jump that you can make there. The vehicles must be operated within half mile of the approved IBZs, and an AVL is required. We request that you allow us to install an AVL on your truck so that we can easily take care of monitoring and enforcement. We can show our funders that the vehicles are operating under program requirements, and we're just able to keep information a little more streamlined, less paperwork for the truck owner as well. Next slide, please. So the mileage, the truck must average about 5,000 miles a year or more for 5 years. As part of the agreement, you agree to remain in the program and be a program truck for 5 years with a minimum of 5,000 miles. 70% of the total VMT of that truck must be within the tri-state area, as you see here, and your vehicle must visit an industrial business zone at least 2 times a week. Next slide, please. In addition, because we are working this program at a DOT, we like to integrate some of the other projects that are going on, including Vision Zero, safety enhancements. Vision Zero is a very big deal for the city and for the Department of Transportation. So we are trying to align our truck replacement projects with some inclusion of that, including requiring side guards where it works. Some of these trucks don't have a gap, but where you see a gap between the wheels and the underbody of a truck, we require that side guards are installed as part of the quid pro quo for getting the incentive funding. In addition to that, we require, additional mirrors, anything, backup alerts, visual alerts, radar detection, anything that will minimize the blind spots, the blind spots that are around these trucks, which are really significant. And so we want to make sure that the trucks that we are helping to put on the road are safe for cyclists and pedestrians, and a better vehicle to drive for the operator as well. Next slide, please. So all that said, if your fleet is not located in an industrial business zone, you can please visit our friends at NYSERDA. The New York State Truck Voucher Incentive Program has the same funding incentive dollars that we have, and they take care of fleets that are not what we would call an IBC fleet. So there is some support there if you don't meet the geographic guidelines required for this program. And if you're really seriously thinking about purchasing a battery electric vehicle, we definitely suggest that you talk to Con Edison. Con Edison has a what's called a Power Ready program, and they can work with your company to reduce the utility side costs of bringing power to your site so that you can install infrastructure to help charge your trucks. It's really important that you speak to them before you kind of go down the road of applying for funding for one of our trucks, because we do want to make sure that the fleet has the recharging infrastructure that it needs so it can operate the vehicle properly, it can meet our program requirements, and also that Con Edison really needs to know where are these chargers going in, because all you need is one little extra, somebody to plug something in and, out go the lights. So it's really important that you talk to them, and please visit this link for more information on the Con Ed program. And next slide, I think, is the slide from this is just our team. DOT works with Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech also is involved, along with Gladstein Neandros, on some of the more established and more famous port programs out in LA and Long Beach, as well as the Port Authority here in New York and New Jersey. And we are, we're glad to be working with them. They really know how to do these programs. ISR is our auditor, subcontractor, who will go out and make sure that the engines are, they do inspections, especially on scrappage. So they'll be there to witness scrappage and document the destruction of the engine, of course, so that we can, meet our deliverables under our contract requirements. And I think that's it. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. And there's our contact information for the project and the program. And please feel free to call or email us at any time. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much, Susan. So before we conclude today's webinar, I just wanted to talk about a couple of other funding opportunities in addition to the New York Clean Trucks Program. As Susan mentioned, the New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program and the New York Clean Trucks Program are funded out of the, partially funded out of the Volkswagen settlement funding. And so those are great opportunities for you to replace your older diesel vehicles in and out of an IBZ zone within the city. NYSERDA also has their Charge Ready New York program if you're looking to, they provide discounts on level 2 chargers. On the federal level, this is always, of course, pending federal budget, but the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, EERE, they often have funding opportunity announcements that are issued throughout the year that offer some discounts or program, mostly demonstration projects. So I recommend that you keep this link, and it'll also be available once the slides are distributed. And then this next one, which is comes out usually at the beginning of the year, we'll see the RFP announced for the EPA's Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, DERA funding. And so this provides funding to replace your diesel vehicles with either a repowered diesel engine or a new alternative fuel vehicle, including battery electric medium and heavy duty trucks. So this is a great opportunity, especially if you don't meet some of the eligibility requirements for the Truck Voucher Incentive Program or the Clean Trucks Program. This is another source of available funding at the federal level. There is a cost share element to this, as there is with other programs, but please feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in this program, and we can help you with your grant application. And then again, as Susan mentioned, I actually need to update these slides, but the Con Edison's Make Ready program, which is called Power Ready now, and other local utilities often have programs that will pay the utility side of the expenses to bring the power to your station if you're looking to install chargers. There are also occasionally time of use charging discounts as well, depending on who your utility provider is. And you can learn more about these funding incentives, funding opportunities and incentives, and more at empirecleancities.org/incentives. So that concludes today's presentation. Here is our contact information. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions on what might be right for your fleet, and any questions on what was presented today. And with that, I am going to pass it off to my colleague, Lydia Henderson, which is, sorry, this is outdated as well, but our Program and Communications Manager, who will lead our Q&A. Thanks, Lydia.
Thanks, Joy, and thank you everyone for attending this afternoon. Myself and Matthew Rusa, a freight planner at the New York City Department of Transportation Freight Mobility Unit, will be moderating this Q&A. So if you have a question and haven't asked it yet, please do drop it in the Q&A box. Matt, I'll let you kick us off.
Sure, thank you, Leah. So we have one question from Paul about has DOT considered New York City ferry infrastructures to meet last mile and middle mile delivery needs? I believe Andrew or Tiffany, if you could answer this question.
Sure, yes. Thank you for the question. I was able to respond, but for the larger group, the city DOT continues to explore other opportunities to use multimodal infrastructure to manage and support freight activity throughout the city. Although DOT has some responsibility regarding NYC ferry infrastructure, is primarily under the jurisdiction of EDC. And that EDC continues to be a very involved partner in all freight activity and freight programs that we have at DOT. So we continue to explore opportunities, whether it's via rail, whether it's via marine, et cetera, et cetera.
Great, thank you. The second question, Joy, I'm going to direct towards you, and I can chime in as well. But the question is, are there any recognition programs and/or publicity opportunities for transporters/trucking companies who use alternative fuels for delivery in New York City?
Great, thanks, Lydia, and thanks for that question. Yes, there are. Empire Clean Cities is actually revamping our green fleet program, which will provide not only an emissions assessment of your fleet, but it will also provide you with a certificate based on a scoring rubric that we use. We also are a membership-based organization. So for our alternative fuel fleets, that are part of our Green Fleet program, we have opportunities for you to be highlighted in our newsletter and on our social media. We also, during non-COVID times, we have a number of publicly facing events that you can participate in. Namely our Empire Clean Vehicle Festival, which is typically on the Union Square cement area in Manhattan, and we have a variety of alternative fuel vehicles that operate in the region out on display. And this is a great opportunity for the general public to come by and take a look at the different types of vehicles that are available and that are operating in the region. And again, we usually have that photographed and publicized as well. And if you have any questions about that, feel free, and participating, feel free to reach out to me. And if you are a fleet that operates on alternative fuel vehicles, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out at joy@empirecleancities.org, and we'd love to get your name out there and get you the recognition that you deserve.
Awesome, thanks, Joy. So Susan, we have a few questions lined up about the Clean Trucks program. I can read them off just one by one, and maybe we'll answer two with one stone. So the first question is, are transitions from gas trucks to alternative fuels eligible for grants? You are still on mute.
Sorry.
No worries.
So the short answer is no. The grants are for diesel emission reductions. Particulate matter and NOx are really of concern to EPA and to air quality regulators. It's not the same emissions profile for gasoline vehicles, so these grants are really meant to go towards diesel replacement only.
Okay, great. The next question is the Volkswagen settlement funding also available for private companies to install electric charging as well as the vehicles? And can you talk about if the vehicles need to be US made?
Yeah, good question. So the funding for VW is specifically on the vehicle side. The Con Ed Make Ready program or Power Ready program is specifically for the infrastructure side. So we're trying to work very closely with Con Edison to make sure that we are, operating in tandem and getting the infrastructure needs of fleets who want to transition to electric vehicles reviewed and looked at, so that these infrastructure improvements move forward, and then we can get the vehicles to the fleet operators. As for Buy America, it's really a hot button issue right now for the past administration. Did not basically close the office. There was really no back and forth on trying to get Buy America waivers through the Federal Highway Administration system. The rule is like, steel content related, and it's a little difficult with vehicles to know the provenance of all of the all of the ingredients that make up a truck or a car. So a lot of it is recycled steel, for instance. So we are, kind of taking another look at that with this new administration. The VW money is not Buy America, subject to Buy America, because it is not federal funds. It's actually private funding from Volkswagen. So they technically don't, Buy America would not apply. But however, just overall for the management of the program, we would, we're taking a look at that. And now with this new administration, we're waiting to hear from them on how they plan to move forward with that policy.
Okay, thank you. And are CNG/RNG hybrid electric trucks eligible for the program, the Clean Trucks Program?
CNG trucks are eligible, yes. Hybrid, CNG and BEV they are eligible. If you run, so RNG, it would need to be a new vehicle, obviously, running on a compressed natural gas engine, and RNG is just renewable natural gas, which is not fracked gas. It is gas that is made from waste byproducts, so it actually closes the loop on greenhouse gas emissions from the waste stream, and is definitely encouraged. When any fleet goes to buy a CNG truck, we would hope very much that they use RNG as their fuel, because that would make it a very clean emissions profile for that truck.
Great, thank you. And just before I jump to the next question for you, Susan, I want to add to the question about funding for electric charging infrastructure, and just add that charging infrastructure is an eligible expense for DERA funding. So that would also be an option for anybody looking for charging. Susan, next question on the Clean Trucks Program. What if a fleet wants to buy a brand new electric truck but does not own an older diesel in their fleet that can be scrapped? And is it possible to take advantage of this program across different owners?
Very good question. And this is a problem that we have been seeing since we've launched last June, where there are a number of really well-run fleets that would love to add BEV to their fleet, but they don't have trucks that are 2009 or older. We've communicated this to DEC regarding the VW funding, and DEC is taking a look at the issue for this program, and even for other programs such as school bus programs, where there are not that many very, very old school buses to even be taken off the road. So we're waiting to hear from DEC on where they are going to come down on this, if they can find a solution for this. That might involve, say, a third-party truck fleet that could substitute, for the scrapped vehicle. But TBD, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on that, and contract amendments that would need to happen to change our agreement with them, et cetera. So we're not able to really take that on just yet, but we're hopefully working towards that as a solution.
Okay, great. And final question for you right now. Why are fleets with over 14 vehicles or vehicles older than 1992 not qualified for the Clean Trucks Program?
So that was a rule that DEC established as part of the VW cooperative agreement with New York City DOT. And the purpose for that is that, back to my initial statement, this VW funding is really meant to promote market transformation and freight electrification of freight. So there, it basically is trying to discourage smaller fleets from just going back into another diesel truck. They want to see not just the big fleets, but also the mom and pop fleets try to take advantage of this program and retire their old diesel vehicles and get into a BEV. So that's the reason for that.
Awesome, thank you, Susan. We have a couple questions now for the DOT team. So Tiffany Ann or Andrew or anybody else online. The first question is, where would transportation providers in New Jersey delivering daily throughout New York City go for potential funding of EV vehicles? Actually, maybe Susan, maybe you have insight on that as well.
Yes, and yeah, go ahead, Lydia. I'm sorry.
I was going to say even Joy might have some suggestions within the New Jersey Clean Cities Coalition.
Yeah, I would. Unfortunately, I'm more privy to what's going on in New York, especially with what Susan has been working on. So Susan or Joy, if you're able to provide support on this, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I mean, I recommend looking at the DERA grants. Those are on a federal level, and so the funds are allocated by each EPA region. So that's a great source to look at. And then I also recommend looking at the New Jersey Clean Cities Coalition. Chuck Feinberg is their Clean Cities coordinator, and he's been doing this for many, many years and can direct you to some possible sources of funding in New Jersey. And I will drop a link in the chat box.
Great, thanks, Joy. Next question for DOT. What are the greenhouse gas emission methodologies, metrics, and measurement tools currently in use to ensure achievement by the 80 by 50 goal?
I think they vary by agency. I think it depends on also what we are, what the sources of GHG that we are looking at to reduce, whether it's from buildings, whether it's specifically from different fleets. So it varies. I think part of it is also we're able to depend on the data sharing that we have with businesses that are contracted by the city to see how they are also capturing the reduction in emissions from their fleets or other what's what I'm looking for, or other resources that they're providing to the city as well. So it's more of a mixed compilation of the ways that we're capturing those reductions. Also, we coordinate with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, Department of Environmental Protection, and the Department of DMHOH, Health and Mental Hospitals, to determine what metrics that they are using as well to note the reduction of emissions. Sorry, health and mental hygiene, I knew it was off. To determine the reduction in harmful emissions as well. So as I said, it's a compilation depending on what resource we're actually looking at that is reducing emissions.
Great, thank you. I think this next question could be open for any of our panelists, but is there a partnership planned with Hunts Point purveyors to work with their clients to collect used fry oil, et cetera?
I'm not entirely sure. I know that Tri-State Biodiesel had a presence in Hunts Point, and they would go around and pick up used cooking oil. Come back and have it sent to be refined and come back as clean biodiesel. You're talking about solid waste or just the cooking oil?
I think both, solid waste as well.
Yeah, I'm not honestly sure where that stands right now. I know there was a pilot program for that. But I'm not sure if anything has advanced along those lines.
Okay, we can do some research on our end as well and send a follow-up to the person who asked that question. The next question we have is, what is the state of clean construction vehicles? Are there programs for contractors to transition their fleets, and are these vehicles being developed?
I can take this one. That's a good question. I think it's just depending on the type of vehicle. April, if you're welcome to reach out to me, and I can do some digging on the currently available vehicles in electric and natural gas. Additionally, I know that in a recent funding announcement issued by the Department of Energy, one of the topic areas was focused on developing electric alternatives for construction equipment and vehicles. So it's definitely on the DOE's priority list. And so hopefully we'll be seeing more options coming out in the coming years. But please reach out to me, and I can do some research on our end to identify some currently available vehicles, and potentially even connect you with some fleets who are using them outside of New York.
Great, thank you. And this is actually our final question, and we still have a few minutes left. So if you have a question you haven't asked yet, please do drop it in the Q&A. And Susan, I'm not sure if you have this number off the top of your head, but the question is, how many small fleets are there in New York City that may be eligible for the Clean Trucks Program?
Yeah, I did see that come up. I don't know, honestly. We don't take, we just take them as they come. We haven't really gone looking for a global number of vehicles, and it's kind of a little bit complicated because it could be the same owner but multiple companies. So we look at that as well. So it's kind of hard to answer that question. I was looking while I was listening to the other questions on the methodology for 80 by 50, and I looked it up. They use the what's called guidance from the Global Protocol for Community Scale Greenhouse Gas Emission Inventories, or GPC, in compliance with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. So I just suggest the folks take a look, Google 80 by 50 NYC, and download the booklet, and you can learn much more about that.
Thanks, Susan. That's all we have for questions. So we can leave the Q&A box open for a couple more minutes, or I'll turn it over to Joy.
All right, thanks so much, Lydia, and thanks to everybody for your questions and for your time today. If we happen to miss your question, or if you think of something after we conclude today, again, please feel free to reach out, joy@empirecleancities.org, or you can, we'll send around these slides with contact information for both Andrew and Susan. If you have more questions about the Clean Trucks Program or the different programs and pilots out of the New York City Department of Transportation. So thank you again. We'll be sending the slides, the recordings, and a brief survey within the next 24 hours. And we appreciate your survey responses so that we can continue to do webinars like these and make sure that they meet your requirements. So thanks so much and have a great day.